Helen, thank you so much for joining us at Fire and Forte, especially during Tech Week. And if I reveal to everyone that it's a Sunday, so an extra big thank you.
That's okay. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So let's get stuck into it, because I think you are just the perfect example of switching careers after a solid experience in one field and then moving into a more technical area. So could you talk to us about what your current role is and also what it entails?
Yes, so currently I lead a team that basically amplifies categories across our website. And the piece of work that we do is to really drive website availability. We manage the sales mix of categories to get a really strong business outcome. So the kind of things that we focus on is how we flight product and price, for example, across the website. So what our homepage looks like. We work on online only events. So events like Black Friday, for instance, but we also create events outside of that as well to really drive excitement for customers and sales for our website. We focus on availability. So one of the key things is for us to really maximize the range that our customers can shop. So how we do that is around managing website thresholds, but also looking at the root cause of availability as well. And then we pull other levers as well, such as working on navigation and search with some of our technical teams. So I like to think of our role as being a little bit of commercial, or a lot of commercial acumen, but mixed with digital as well. And probably one of the best ways to think about it, because I was thinking about this morning, obviously we used to be a buyer in a bricks and mortar store, and a buyer would be really managing their sales and profit mix, building relationships with suppliers, thinking about their promotional program, being in control of what the shelf looked like in store, how they were going to amplify new products, and looking for those, I guess, opportunities to really drive either impulse sales or look at using front ends or additional displays to really disrupt that customer journey. So we do a form of that, but on the digital shelf.
That's a great way of looking at it. And if we think about only over the last 3 years, and obviously COVID being the huge driver of that, those buyer roles that do exist for every physical store out there, whether we're talking about a supermarket or we're talking about a toy store or we're talking about a gardening store, there's a buyer for every one of those businesses who looks after a certain category, who would have maybe had some online presence for their category before, but certainly would have now had a transformative change in their role as more and more things sold online, especially for supermarkets, especially for areas like DIY, especially for beauty, for example. So I think that's a really good way to think about it, to think, this is what I look at for my physical store. Now, how does that apply to my online store? So did you move during COVID, before COVID, after COVID?
Oh, I moved before COVID, so probably maybe about 2 years before COVID. And actually, COVID was a really interesting time because it absolutely accelerated the role of digital and the role of online shopping, which in one way was fantastic because it made those conversations with the bricks and mortars team much easier to have. They had to become more interested and more considerate of the role that online was playing in their overall sales and profit outcomes. So it definitely helped that situation. So, and also it's quite a complex business to work in as well online. There's so many different facets to think about. If you're there right from the beginning in terms of a business really exploding, it really helps to kind of, continue on that journey. Whereas actually, I do feel very sorry for people that joined during COVID, trying to join and understand a whole new business from in a virtual world, really, really challenging in that time.
So you got to almost understand the infrastructure, the fundamentals, the basics, and then on came a life-changing moment for the whole industry. So you're a survivor of everything that must have the way that must have impacted your business. I suppose I would love to know about that if possible, but I suppose to stick to theme, I'd be really curious to know, you went from this really successful and long career in a traditional buying role into that world before COVID. So actually it was still much more niche actually as well to some extent, especially in Australia, which has got a lower penetration at that point before COVID. What at that point did you need to learn, and what did you learn over those years that was so important, especially just before the rush came?
Yeah, so I've been a buyer for maybe 25 years before that. So very, very long time. It's all I'd ever done. And I think one day I just thought, it's now or never. If I don't make the change in my 40s, then it's going to be really difficult to make the change, I think, much later on, especially I think in such a fast-paced environment, or fast-changing environment. So I think, so your question was what kind of skills were transferable from the role I was doing in buying versus moving to the kind of digital form of that. And I think the key thing really was around stakeholder management. That's really, really important because it can be different setup for every different business, right? But in our particular business, we sell the products that our bricks and mortar buying team purchase and buy and negotiate. So we're highly dependent on them for range, for even promotional programs, the cost of goods. So we have to be really closely aligned with their plans and work together to really get to work on the same strategy, so we have the same outcome, whether it be in the bricks and mortar stores or in the digital online store. So that's really, really important to make sure that everyone's aligned. And some of the, obviously way back when we were a really small penetration, we could kind of do a lot of stuff and it wouldn't really impact. But now we're such a post-COVID, such a bigger part of that sales number, and also a strong part of the growth as well. So even though we're small, we're still a significant part of the growth. It's really important that you've got that alignment and you lean on them for their support. So that was a big one. Just being able to problem solve was probably another big one. So it's actually really complex in the business I'm in right now to work out who to talk to, how to get things done, how to solve a problem. And it's just making sure that you are able to build those relationships with people. So relationship building was a massive part of my old role, and a really big part of this role, so that you can really unpack some of the issues you have in order to get to a really good outcome. So they're probably the main two things in terms of transferable skills. And the other one, of course, in my role is I've done 25 years of buying. So my job was about managing sales and profit. So being highly commercial, that's really important because that's exactly the job I do now in digital. So how do you maximize the business outcomes for the digital online business? So it's really important that you've got, some of those building blocks. And the other thing I would say is that as a buyer, it kind of puts you in a very centralized role in your business. You get lots of support from everyone around you, but you intrinsically understand the customer. You understand how the business works, how products get delivered, how they get onto shelf, how they get sold. That knowledge is extremely important when you move into an online business. It's a complex business, and if you really understand that, you're already set up for success.
They're wonderful examples. I think intrinsically understanding the customer and potentially understanding how their behavior fluctuates over time, whether it's a recession or how it goes from when you turn into a family versus the shopping habits of someone else. I suppose you're taking 25 years experience of witnessing those behaviors change, are you, into a digital environment that people might behave differently, but also got new shoppers coming in. So I suppose that must be hugely relevant.
Yeah, and even in the time I've been, I guess, in the business, which let's think is about 6 years now in online, I would say that when we started, we'd have had very minimal targeting capabilities. So we were very much focused on, the masses, and that's still my role is predominantly that, above the line to everybody. But we've increasingly become more capable and more optimizing the types of messages or offers or what we show our customers, depending on either their life cycle or the groupings that we put them in. So we've become a significantly amount more sophisticated. We're not necessarily at that personalization stage yet in everything that we do, but that journey has in 5 years has come along significantly as well.
Excellent. And then it's that combining of that capability with your experience of maybe what you wanted to do in your previous role, but maybe the capability wasn't there. I mean, these skills that you transferred over, stakeholder management, problem solving, relationship building, especially in large businesses, but in any size business, really, if you can feel more comfortable talking to people and have some kind of empathy, I suppose, that they might have no idea what you're talking about because online in some areas is quite new, and be able to explain what you want and why. Has that been a barrier or a skill, actually explaining what you want and why to some people? I guess influencing must be quite huge.
Yeah, I think it goes back, doesn't it, to understanding how people like to receive information. Some people really want the detail and want to understand the mechanics of everything, and other people just need it all chunking up. And I think it's just about trying to remember that, excuse me, because it can be really complex, but actually I think sometimes really what you need can be quite simple. So you're completely right, and I think that is a skill that you have to develop over time. But it's also really about understanding who you're dealing with as well, and it's something I've had to personally work on. It's not necessarily been something I found that comes naturally to me. So I've had to spend quite a lot of time thinking about who are my key stakeholders, how do they like to receive information, how much do I know about them, what do they need to know from me, and what kind of regular cadence and rhythms do I need to have with them? Because once you've done that, if you have issues or problems, it's so easy to pick up the phone because you've developed that relationship, or ask a favor, or ask for an explanation, that kind of stuff. So definitely been important.
And also in quite a fast-paced environment, once you've actually got those solid relationships, it becomes easier to solve problems together or come up with a solution or an idea, especially in the fast-paced, if there's an out of stock, which there's been so many supply challenges. I'm just thinking that would be one area where very helpful if you understand each other, work well with each other, and can therefore think, okay, how are we going to deal with this together? What you just talked about the application of your commercial knowledge, I'm just repeating this back to you because I just think that's a really great example of reapplying 25 years experience into how do we find the right price, the right promotion, the right, because I suppose some of these commercial models in online in so many different businesses are relatively new because the demand is so different. The cost of fulfillment is relatively new. I know in the UK, and I've talked about this in one of the other episodes, that when I moved into e-commerce, I looked at the UK that was quite a bit ahead of us, and one of the UK retailers had expanded so quickly they were talking about, hang on, we've got all of these costs. We've really satisfied our customers, but actually how are we going to recoup these costs? And it was quite a helpful warning for us in Australia to think, let's watch out for that some of those costs could impact on us. So I think the application of commercial knowledge and maybe sharing that internally to make sure that you don't grow too fast or you don't absorb too many costs might have been many of the areas you helped.
Yeah, no, correct. I think how we grow in a really sustainable way is becoming extremely central to what we do. I think 5 years ago, it was about gaining penetration and mass, and we did that without really thinking about profitability or optimization. And now it's a complete pivot in everything that we do. We're thinking about how we grow in a sustainable way, and not we want to continue to grow, and we want to grow at speed, but we don't want to do that at the cost of not doing it in a profitable way. So you're right, it's super expensive to serve customers online.
Great word, sustainably. I think the tech industry at the moment is suffering with that at a broader level, aren't they? That through COVID, they grew, and then now they're trying to just make it much more sustainable as a business model. So to be honest, I think you've probably, sorry, did you want to add anything else?
No, I was just thinking, even like, obviously I've got a commercial background and the role I do is commercial in online, but even that message that is starting to really embed in all the technical teams as well. So teams that are thinking about website functionality, they're building stuff, and they're starting as well to really embed those sort of smart growth principles. So it's not just happening from my area. It's definitely being embedded across, and that's something that we're really trying to do as a business. So it's not just about customer first. It's also about smart, sustainable growth, and the two don't have to be separate from each other. You can do both at the same time. So I think that's the kind of messaging which we're trying to really embed in teams at the moment.
Brilliant. I'm going to add leadership to the transferable skills that you took into that role, because that is you're leading and you've got some vision. It almost sounds like you're preempting something to the broader team. So is that something that we can add to the list, leadership and experience?
Yeah, well, yeah, 100%. I think it's definitely something you need when you work in the online business I work in. And I would say it's horizontal leadership that is extremely important. If I think of the role I do today, it is very difficult to get stuff done on my own. I can't deliver much in my own capacity. I rely on numerous different people to deliver. So being able to lead through others is probably the biggest piece and the biggest thing. And it's a slight pivot, because I think there was props within a bricks and mortar environment. There's you almost own your own mini business and you can deliver end to end to some degree. But when you're in a business like I'm in, that's much more difficult. You have to lead through others. So I think there is a slight difference between where I've come from and where I am now.
And again, for the tens of thousands of people that are working in omni-channel roles everywhere, the same will be true, leading through others, because it's still forging its way about what the right way of working is, isn't it? If the majority of sales has been bricks and mortar and now it's moved, there's kind of quite quickly become new teams, new levels of integration that's been needed, hasn't it? So yeah. I think your experience will be quite a common one across many different businesses. So to be honest, you transferred so many skills. I don't think you probably needed to learn that many new skills, but I'm pretty sure that you did, because the lingo is so different. What new skills did you learn? Have you learned? Was there any that you made really focused, determined effort on quite early on to make sure that you learned to help you really operate in that role?
Well, definitely working on horizontal leadership was a big one. Yes, I had to become, I suppose, digitally literate. That's probably the best word. So when I first moved into digital, I didn't know what SEO was, SEM was, didn't know anything. I had no background in any of that. I was also surprised at how manual everything was. I just thought everything was automated and press a few buttons and, you know, you get what you want. But and I'm sure in some businesses it is, but that's not the experience that I had. So interestingly, and you talk about transferable skills, you know, structure and process was still super important to work through, and frameworks and all of those things. So it didn't feel that different right at the beginning. But yeah, just really understanding what are the digital levers that we as a team could pull, you know, how customers were converting on those digital levers, which ones were better for what, how you could particularly amplify a particular event or a new product launch, and what parts of the customer journey could we utilize or disrupt, but without disrupting too much that we would impact you know, that frictionless customer journey, which is also super important. So yes, there was a lot of digital stuff we had to as a team all understand as we first sort of moved into, and I say we because we brought quite a few people over from the sort of the buying environment into the team that I sit in, because my role, as I said, is all about merchandising, digital merchandising.
And any different ways of working in the digital world versus the ways that you operated in a more traditional previous role?
Yeah, obviously we're right. I mean, obviously we moved into, actually literally when I first came into digital, the agile ways of working weren't in place, not for my teams, not for more functional teams. It was all in place for sort of product-based teams. But since then, we have rolled that out to pretty much everybody, and even seen some of those rituals go into bricks and mortar. So it is an interesting one to navigate, because, and we still haven't necessarily solved it. I think our team works on a lot of what I would say BAU. And when you've got ongoing pieces of work that sort of never ever stop, that's a bit harder to fit into an agile structure that is, you know, a start and end point, and then you hand it over, and then you pick up something new, and you hand it over again. That doesn't work. It doesn't work like that in our team. But what we do is we pick and choose the components of agile that work for us. So we work on, or we utilize things like stand-ups, retros. Big room planning, for instance, is something that we, as a team, a big group, always collaborate on. So that quarterly planning, I've found really useful, but also trying not to lose sight of where we might be or go to in the full year, or the year after, and the year after that, because I think sometimes to focus on quarterly planning, you can just lose the long distance view. So we are picking and choosing those agile rituals that make sense.
That's an interesting one, because agile is very new, and we recently had a future of work consultant on Fire and Forte who talked about it being probably one of the #1 skills for the audience to get up to speed with. But it does sound as though, possibly with your experience and knowledge of the business that you're already in, to know that pick and choosing is better than going all in agile. Otherwise you would have lost, like you said, this business as usual rhythm that was acquired. Was that so that was something that you just noticed quite early on, was it, that wouldn't potentially work in that model?
Yeah, I mean, it was good because I've been on the complete journey from, non-agile to let's go fully agile. Let's try and fit ourselves in a square peg in a round hole, and let's see if this works. And then it's actually quite challenging, for the team as well, because you're trying to just make stuff work that doesn't necessarily work in a functional or, as I say, a BAU team. So just being comfortable with not having to do everything, and to lean on those components that really work for you has definitely helped. And we've just got better at it over time. When we first started doing things like big room planning, it was really clunky and difficult. Now we smash through it. We're super organized. Everyone's using Jira, and the team has really evolved, and it's easy to see that some of those components can just fit in any way of working. And as I say, some of it's almost has gone into our bricks and mortar teams as well, that would never be able to be fully agile, in the sense you couldn't move a person that has strong site supply relationships in one particular area to just another because the capacity is required, and then shift them back again. Like those relationships are super important, and you can't break them. So you've just got to be cognizant of the type of role that you do and make it work, I think.
Wonderful. And a great sense of achievement when you actually can look back over learning this new, because everyone's jobs are changing, I think, so much at the moment. When you can look back and think, we've integrated processes in a way that works for us, for our business needs, and we've not lost anything, I think that's a great end outcome. I was wondering, and I think for anyone considering moving into a tech role, one thing that can be a bit off-putting is, what if I work with truly tech people who are building, who are, software developers or engineers, and am I going to frustrate this audience if my role is to work with them on maybe a commercial proposal? How is working with the more technical teams? How did you find blending in with this team, given that there was such a broad range of skills and roles? Any tips or reassurance?
It's a great question. It's a really great question. It's not easy. And I think sometimes you have to remember that you've got lots of qualities and experience that perhaps the tech teams don't have. So I think it's really super important to not be put off, because obviously when you're dealing with people that are highly technical and they've got a really specialist skill set, that it's easy to be put off by that and to almost feel stupid yourself. So, and there's been many times I'm thinking, oh, I really don't understand what they're saying. And my way is to just think, I'll understand this. I'm not going to panic in the moment. I'm just going to listen. I'm going to reflect. I'm going to chat people on the side, ask a few extra questions. I'm going to repeat what I think I've understood, and make sure that I sense check that what they're telling me I've really taken in and I've interpreted it in the right way, and just to keep asking really curious questions. But also, as I say, going back to the fact, don't underestimate the experience you have from a business perspective, because as I said, my background is a business perspective, because you can actually bring quite a lot to the party. And I have had numerous now opportunities to work with super clever people, like data science people, but sometimes they don't have the full understanding of how a business works, and that common sense actually you can really add to a conversation to get a real better outcome for each other. And so both of you are learning off each other. So yeah, just go in, face into it, and then build good relationships, because you can ask them questions with good relationships.
So true. And we're stepping out of our comfort zone, and maybe that's why it does feel uncomfortable, because for 20-ish years we've had this experience, we've known what we're talking about, maybe we're in a certain rhythm, especially when we work in sales. You often see a certain trend year on year at certain times of year, but like, to be easy on yourself and think, I'm out of my comfort zone, I can apply this knowledge, but it's okay to be learning in a new space. And I've learned so many new things across my career. I'm going to learn this. It's just at first it's going to feel a little bit alien. It's probably being extremely cognizant of the fact that you're just going through a period of learning something new.
Yeah, and also you're never going to know as much as that they do. Not unless, I mean, certainly not in my business or my role, because I think it's big, and we're all very focused on our own jobs. We're not like in a small startup where perhaps you're doing a piece of everything and you're going to fully learn lots of different things. I'll never be in that position. So you have to allow people to be the expert in their role and depend on them, trust them, and be able to, as I say, ask those those dumb questions, and then obviously never a dumb question, but get to that together. So it's just something you've just got to feel comfortable being uncomfortable constantly.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, I think that's a good reminder, isn't it? And making a little joke through a nice relationship always makes it. I do believe we all want to help each other, and especially when someone's a bit vulnerable, to say, I don't know that. Can you repeat that again? No,
Yeah.
No one cares really. Hopefully. Wonderful. I mean, so much good, really useful advice. And I think it's really cool when you look back on your career and just realize how much you can add value to the next phase of the career. So it's been great to hear all about your journey. I was wondering if you could share some advice for women especially, but anyone really wanting to get into a more technical role that thinks, actually, I do need to, like you said earlier, it's now or never. What are the kind of skills, maybe you advise as an individual, but if you were also employing somebody, what kind of skills, whether technical or behavioural, that you would suggest people focus on evolving?
Yeah, probably my list is more behavioural, but I think you've got to be comfortable with ambiguity. It's such a fast-paced, changing environment that you have to be, or have to try to be, comfortable with that. And that's a big one. Being comfortable to fail is key. Asking curious questions. So I don't think you need to have a full understanding, as I say, of all the technical things. Obviously, if you're going into an extremely technical role, then there'd be a whole suite of qualifications and technical skills that you should think about picking up, training yourself on, etc. So I can't really probably touch on that specifically. So I'm sort of thinking more about those, as you say, behavioural things, but resilience as well. That's important because there are going to be times where, as I say, you do feel uncomfortable. You're not quite fully understanding everything that's going off. But as I say, it goes back to those kind of curious questions. Being a good problem solver is a key. And for me, it's about leaning on others. So you don't have to have all the answers. So, really leaning on other people, because I think you just get even if you've been able to get 3/4 of the way there, just getting people to look at what you're proposing and what you're thinking is super important, because I think you'll have a really evolved plan or a solution if you do lean on other people as well. And then just trying to be a little bit future thinking, like where is everything going to be in the next year, 5 years, and what do you need to do for you in order to keep on top of that and keep relevant?
I'm actually really excited more than ever about the next few years of work with this, because these are all skills that you can so often transfer, aren't they? If you've been in a job for 20 odd years, problem solving, resilience, patience to keep at it, are skills that sometimes just actually come naturally because you've been in so many different environments. So
yeah, exactly. It's not necessarily new, right? It's just making sure you continue using them.
Yeah, wonderful. Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, for all of the advice. And I feel like asking you a personal question now, but I haven't prepped you for that, so maybe I won't. Maybe
Sounds like you still will, though.
Well, maybe I'll say, what's next? What do you think is the most exciting area of your, when you look forward to the industry and career? Is what excites you the most about it? Not too personal.
I think I've been thinking a lot lately about where or how the shape of my role and the job that I do, how that will change in the future. And as I say, I think we talked a little bit about how manual it can actually be, which is quite surprising. I really think in the future we're going to be able to pull, real-time digital levers that will produce a result on the website that will make people convert quicker and faster, that we'll get real-time reporting, that we'll be able to understand and see whether what we've done or how we've changed the digital journey, how that's impacted, how that's impacting our sales and our profitability, and we'll be able to do more of that or less of that depending on, and that's kind of where I think kind of the role that I play will maybe adapt and move to. So we're going to have to kind of shape ourselves to be able to react to that. So that's kind of where I'm thinking, and how in the future we set up our teams to be able to deliver on that. And then I'm also thinking about personalization and AI, and how do I get myself really upskilled in those areas, because they're areas that I don't know a heap about, and I can see will become more and more important in the future.
Yeah, brilliant. And look, we're not alone there. I think it's so, especially the consumer facing AI area is so new to everyone. So I think that's a really good message. But hey, it's Sunday. You don't have to do any studying today. Thank you so much for spending the time to talk about work and careers with us. You've been absolutely brilliant. So thanks again, and take care.
Thanks for having me.